Jesus is the True God Yahweh, Part 6, by Doctrines of Grace Baptist. Originally a response to Why Jesus is Not the Genuine God, Irrefutable, by Yuratchka. In this video, I will be going straight through three passages that undeniably teach that Jesus is the true God Yahweh, while not denying his relational distinction from the Father or his voluntary subjugation to the Father who is also Yahweh. Notice, I am not just citing verses. I am not ripping a verse out of context. I am not simply reading into a text a theological application. And I am not setting up some artificial standard for how Scripture must say things in order for me to believe it. I am going to three places where the text of Scripture teaches about who Jesus ontologically is and seeing what they say. Let's look at John 1, 1 through 6, 9 through 14, and 16 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we seen his glory, the glory of the only Son of God, full of grace and truth. And from his fullness we all have received grace upon grace, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God at any time. The only God, who is at the Father's side, he has made him known. This passage is John's magnum opus. It's his preface to the Gospel of John. He is describing Jesus throughout the first 18 verses, and he backs up these assertions throughout the rest of the Gospel of John. There is no legitimate way to read this passage without concluding Jesus is the creator God of the Old Testament Yahweh, who is relationally distinct from the Father, who is also Yahweh. Let's look at Colossians 1, 15 through 20 as a whole. Who is Paul, a Jew, a monotheist, describing? He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, because in him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, dominions, or rulers, or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the arche, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. In context, it is hard to see how some created a God could be described like this. What right would any created thing have to reconcile all things to himself? Remember, all things were created for Jesus. P.S. The word God is not in the Greek of verse 19. Therefore, it is Jesus who is reconciling all things to himself. Let's look at Hebrews 1. Long ago, and in many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days he spoke to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to the angels as his name as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. Before I move on, notice how Jesus became much more superior to the angelic order of creation. Jesus isn't some highly ranked angel. After Jesus ascended into heaven, his place is much more superior than the highest created order of being, angels. By the way, if you're still stuck on the word become, remember, Jesus humbled himself to become a man. This is why he became again as much superior to the angels. Continuing. For to which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son, today I have begotten you"? Or again, "I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son"? And again, when he brings the firstborn of the world, he says, "Let all of God's angels worship him." Of the angels, he said, "He makes his angels wings and his ministers a flame of fire." But of the Son, he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. The scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. And you, Lord, laid the foundation of the earth in the beginning. The heavens are the works of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like a robe, you will roll them up. Like a garment, they will be changed. But you, still Jesus, are the same, and your years have no end." And to which of the angels has he ever said, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet"? Angels are the heavenly created beings. The point of Hebrews 1 is that Jesus is not some created heavenly being, a God. He is far, far beyond that. He is the Lord who is Lord. After all, Jesus is the exact imprint of his nature. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.